notes. Hello. I also have German lessons in this room, so if I go slightly crazy and do really bad amodal verbs, don't blame me. Okay, so thank you for the great introduction, and thank you all for turning up. And also, I feel a little bit sad because our very good friend Babitha, who you may have come to hear talk and not me, had her visa recalled at the last minute, which actually is kind of weird how that happened. And it was this booking.com reservation she'd made and then switched it to something else. And within hours, the German visa consulate in Bangalore cancelled her visa that had already been given, which says to me there might be another bot from booking.com going straight to visas. Is digital working for us or for someone else? And I think you'll see that's a bit of a theme throughout of the talk. But luckily, we have two amazing people who stepped in today to replace Babitha. So big bows, because their talks are going to be way better than mine. So I'm going to sign, and then he'll sign for me. Good. So some notes. Really, this is some notes on some work we've been thinking about for the last few months, but really has taken more live action in an event that Babitha hosted for us in India in their Goa studio, and we continued working on with the National Institute of Design, NID, as it's known, students in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, India. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's notes. So I really would like, if there's points you want to wave and say, what do you mean by that? Or question it, feel free to do so live or do so afterwards, and we can continue a conversation. So I want you to see this not as any form of pitch or research findings, they're more research queries. Disclaimer, I think the world's a bit fucked up actually, and I've been thinking this more and more. Just everything is getting really, really weird. And I think, I used to work with the brilliant Rory Hamilton 20 years ago. 20 years ago, and really look in the computer-related design department, which was run by Rory and with the prof of Gideon Crampton Smith. And we were really pushing it was responsible, that's not the wrong thing to say, but it was very much the amazing possibilities of this brave new world that digital could offer. I remember we discovered Google as a way to find data sheets much easier for the electronics class I was teaching. So that was the era it was in, and everything was possible. And I think really in the last 6 months or the last year, we've really started to think, yes, it is about possibilities, and absolutely it is, but that sense of responsibilities has really started to shout very loudly at the back of, well, probably at the front of my head to me. I'll sign that. And I think that sort of started to heavily influence the viewpoint of, and why I started to choose to work with the very brilliant Mozilla. So, and Michelle, who's here. And we know these, we've all seen these kind of examples. This was from a slide from a talk I gave to our students back in Dundee in February. And I guess every day I could add slide after slide after slide of really quite scary shit. This article on the left with Robert Mercer, it's like, I think I said to Rory at WhatsApp, I was like, when Trump got in, it's like, oh, we used to think of ourselves as a rebel alliance. It's like, no, the empire just kind of won. It's a very depressing feeling of like, what hope do we have in a way? And it's really, it started to affect me quite a bit, and to the point at which at the weekend I just thought, stuff it. I don't want to be part of social media anymore. That's a very personal feeling. I feel as if I'm being on Twitter, for me, felt like I was just another statistic for various right-wing authorities. And it was really upsetting, it's kind of like how I became vegetarian in 1996. I kind of forgot to eat meat. It was a bit like that with Twitter. I went, fuck it, I'll just delete it. It really was. I didn't say, so long, Twitter, thanks for all the tweets and fish and things. It was just like, oh yeah, I'll just delete it. And it's really nice. Maybe I'll go back. I've got another 26 days before it actually disappears. And I'm really fickle. Sorry. So some other things that have influenced us. I think Michelle is going to tweet under the Open IoT Studio some of these links. Yeah, obviously she can say what she wants about me because I'll never know. But if you're on that same, if you're still there, you can follow this, or we can write them on the. I can do my lecturing on right on here, or I can sign it. Okay. Another publication is one that Michelle and Mark Sermon made. Oh, this is really important. This one, actually, the Internet Health Report. How many of you have seen this? Just a quick show of hands of, yes, everyone that was at our workshop today or worked with Mozilla. So this is really good. You should really go and see this. It's the Internet Health Report.org, written by Solana, who works with us. And it really is this incredible focus point for come in, hello. Very focus point for, I think, Mozilla's position and viewpoint beyond a very brilliant open source browser. So I would really urge you to get involved with this. Very much an alpha release. It's open for massive critique and engagement, and I think all of you have a really important part to say in that. And also to look at this one, which is more of a kind of like very much a positioning thought piece by Mark Sermon, Executive Director of Mozilla, and Michelle, who's the Director of our Open IoT Studio. Again, we can get you these links. Oh yeah, and the one that we made in 2 weeks, we might have some physical copies left, but we've got lots of PDFs we can send you, or you can download around applying this thinking with a wider group of many people in the room with us at the moment, back to healthy practices for the Internet of Things. I'm really bad at spelling, but I kept it anyway. The intent of things. Maybe I thought that. That sounds like a Shakespeare play. That thing where Google auto-completes, which again, another really dodgy biasing position from huge tech corps who say, it's not me, we're just a platform. Don't type in are Jews, or are Muslims, or are women, or are gay people, because the results are disgusting, and Google consistently refused to change that position. I just took a more of an interesting, is the Internet of Things? I really wanted to see what it said, because I thought it might come up with something to talk about. This was yesterday. I think these ideas of, is it real? Is it safe? Is it secure? A good investment, and a very recent paradigm. Academics out there have been Googling this, especially if they're doing a PhD. Is it a recent paradigm or is it ancient old? So I may remember to return to some of these things throughout the talk. And maybe you want to. So the first thing is that it's definitely not new. If you've ever read anything that's fictional and related to science fiction, you'll consistently see these themes come up. And actually, I really love this one, Philip K. Dick, Ubik. His lesser known book that I think is probably his best. We can discuss that later. I just think it's really amazing that this sort of slightly dodgy technician of some psychological drama thing going on in your head, it's really complicated, but basically arguing with various things in his house, the door to get in, the fridge, and he's making all these kind of promises back to these devices, saying, oh, I promise you I'll do this. And I wonder now, had that been written, it would almost be saying, actually, please don't use this as evidence in a law court, or I promise I won't do this, or how many people have you shared it with, or could you actually have an argument saying, if I give you $20 to your service provider, will you keep my data private or something? So I think there's a really modern take on this, but effectively it's a pretty well-trodden argument. So in all of this space, as Michelle said with the Open IT Studio, how do we want to tackle some of these? I think they're really real concerns and also opportunities, but how do we tackle that? We wanted to get people together, and they've come from a very interesting and diverse background. Any of you who like sci-fi, like Battlestar Galactica, I think Pete and I have used this analogy about how we come to work together. It's like a bit of a kind of the leftover crew of stuff. It's lots of different people coming at things from different perspectives in order to with a very clear mission to kind of like tackle stuff. And no, there's no one ship that you can sit in. There's lots of different ones. And I think we really feel like that we call ourselves and think of ourselves as a professional learning network. You're here now. You're absolutely a part of that, and we'd love to find ways to continue that journey. It looks like this at times. It might not be the internet you expected. It's okay. Those ratings are really sharp, but that's my son. He's great at that stuff, and we live around the corner from there. And so health and safety totally covered. We also like to craft and build research and prototypes and make publications such as the one I showed you earlier. So going back to this sort of the Internet Health Report and everything else is like this. We've been asking our students for many years, what shape is the internet? And actually then we used to say, oh, it's basically rectangular. It might be landscape or portrait, but that's how you view the web. That position, again, has fundamentally changed. It's anything now. And I think that when you look at the maps that people have done on the shape of the internet over time, really beautiful. And I think these are in MoMA, and you can kind of start to look at that. I think Vladan, our friend at the back, has been doing a lot of alternative mapping on the things that you don't see behind the internet. And services such as Lightbeam for Mozilla Firefox will also help you visualize those other connections. But I think these are really beautiful, but do these diagrams really show how the shapes are created and by whom? You know, what are these increasingly bigger blobs that are appearing and where are they coming from? This is the slight sort of different take on this. So comes from, and this really is a thought from being in India for the last couple of weeks. My very good friend is a professor of digital craft at Northumbria University. She started to think a lot about this, and we're trying to say is, if we're not trying to take an industrialized route, then are we taking a craft route? So instead of necessarily tens of millions of products, are we looking at millions of tens? Is it about people shaping things over time? And there's a very forward-looking report by Charles and Ray Eames in 1958 called the India Report. And in it, they talk about this pot, which is a classic Indian pot called the lota. And it's evolved over thousands of years of many, many people shaping it. I just love this statement here by the Eames, which is many individuals represented in their own way through something they may have added or may have removed, or through some quality in which they are particularly aware. And that feels like that could be a statement about how Mozilla might want the internet to be right now. So I hope you can see where I might be going with this argument. I'd love to really sanity check and kick the tires on this as a discussion and an argument, because that's a massive leap to go from the internet looks like this to what if the internet really looks like some kind of weird shaped pot that you've never seen in your life. And Michelle always goes at this point. But I think there's something I just think there's something really interesting, and I'm not sure why. But when you start to, so another professor of craft at Northumbria, Justin Marshall, he started thinking about this and looked at how particular tools are adapted in regional variations. And I think the term that keeps coming through is these things are resilient. This water pot has lasted thousands of years. And these bill hooks are still things that you can get to clear your land if you want to. And did they prepare for industrialization in a different way? Is this not what Darwin was talking about with evolution? And these are finches and the way they've adapted to localized and regional environments and therefore survived. But also when we think of evolution like that, are there therefore then not extremely fragile pockets of the internet that we might really want to fight to preserve in terms of internet health? So that's sort of some of the reference points that I don't think we've actually fully nailed what the middle is, but I hope you can see where the argument around localization and decentralization of the internet in general and how it can take us to a more resilient, more community focused and ultimately a more healthy and maybe better place for people to be in. So if we then think about the Internet of Things, which I was here to talk about, is if we can craft it and then maybe it can be shaped by the many rather than just the few that we're increasingly seeing. I think there's that Gartner report that if you give a talk on the Internet of Things, you absolutely have to hold up as there's going to be 50 billion connected devices that are worth these trillions of dollars. And actually, it's like, well, how many websites is behind that? Because if there's a billion websites and that's seen as a healthy success of the diversity of the internet, does anyone talk about not the number of devices, but the number of services behind it. 5, 10, maybe 20, maybe Alexa is just the one service to rule them all. Doesn't feel very diverse. So again, how could we start to think this in regional variations and localization? And I always do this image search. So this was back in November, but it looks the same today. If you Google Internet of Things, you get lots of mostly blue service diagrams. It's not very human. If you Google the internet, the Open IoT Studio, actually there's some interesting things in there. There's people and there's boats and there's telephones and there's stuff, and it feels more human. So I guess our goal is, and this is very loaded, a couple of slides, but our goal would be to shift that diagram into something that's just full of slightly random stuff and people, and maybe there's a dinosaur, maybe there's a huge gallery like the V&A that's right at the heart of how we develop the future of the internet. So those are kind of two framing points before I go on to this final section of the talk, which is some of the stuff we've been thinking about in India. So if there's one link you take, it's the only one in the slide, go to this. We would love your critique. It's a series of stories from India around decentralization, not the decentralization of technology, just human decentralization. As my very good friend who's a professor at NID, Praveen Nahar, when he came to visit us in Dundee, everyone talks about this because he asked this question. He turned around to a few people and said, oh, by the way, where are things made? Because if any of you that have been to India, you don't have to ask that question. Making is just everywhere. And I know there's a huge move by Modi at the moment for the super industrialization of India, and there are big groups like Tata and so on, but on all of the streets and all around, you can get things made. So we wanted our friends at Quicksand, and Babitha was going to show you some of this stuff tonight, just to collect us stories, human activities in India that she framed as decentralized. So if you go to that, you'll see some stories around the Gandhian dream and the Khadi movement, which is a type of cloth that came out of how Gandhi used it to actually set up the whole of the peaceful revolution through effectively makers. We can read it in the story. And actually the person who founded this village to support the Gandhian dream started with the premise of saying, there's loads of young people leaving our village, and asked them what it would take for them to stay in that village to make Khadi cloth. And then said, okay, well, it's this price we have to sell stuff at. So it was market research based on people, but not people as customers, but people as workers, which I think is really powerful and really beautiful. So again, when we're thinking philosophies of how we make things and why craft, I think the Gandhian dream is one that's really powerful in there. This is a story about a tiger reserve where people had gone in, a big NGO, and had put sanitation and new toilets in there because people are openly defecating in the forest and around the village. It's a really big problem in India. It's a really big thing that many people are looking at. But they made toilets with pipes underneath it that weren't deep enough, so within a matter of days, the boar that live in the forest were digging them up. And no one ever came to fix them because it wasn't part of the design spec. No one told the designers that they had to build the pipes at a certain depth for the boar. And so again, this is stories of misappropriation of kind of big people coming in and telling smaller groups what they need. But one of my favorites is this story around farming practices and wells, and with an incredible guy, this guy here, Vishwanath, I'm saying wrong, everyone calls him Zen Rain Man, and we met him with our students at the National Institute of Design, and he was looking at some of the work they were doing around water and conservation. There's an amazing blog where he talks about so much around not just water, but the idea of design toolkits coming in and how they're used and what they mean for him as someone who's been working in water conservation for 30, 40 years. And he said this one thing, I think this thing in the toolkit is usually with the person who's commissioned the project but does nothing. I think you can replace that with IoT. There's a lot of move by people like Cisco to place water sensors in all of the wells and make that data open. Yippee! You get a water table map of India. There's 33 million wells, according to Zen Rain Man, in India. So you could totally map the level of water, groundwater, and then obviously use that for sustainability. Or, as he says, would you use this for the industrialists who want to know where all the best land is, or all the best water that they could quickly snap up? Or would this be really useful for Monsanto to know where they would target specific types of crop, whether that's drought resistant or for waterlogged soil or so on? So if we think of water and people as being precious, precious things, which they are, should we not be thinking of data ecologies and ways in which of protecting people from this as IoT comes in? So these different debates were happening when you start to really talk to people in a localized way on the ground that I just didn't know about. And I've read lots of global reports on Cisco and how they want to do developing ICT. So it brings us back to this again. Is it real? I think, yes, it is, kind of. I don't really have an IoT device. Is it safe? Well, clearly, if you read The Guardian, no. Is it secure? It's the previous answer. Is it a good investment? It depends in what or in who and how. I think that's a really great question we get to steer. Is this recent? Absolutely not. And in fact, it probably goes back thousands of years. And again, that's a title for another talk.